So the news broke this morning that Chelsea have appointed Frank Lampard as their new manager. Dan, what do you make of the news, first of all?
Well, it's been expected, isn't it? It's been in the pipeline for a while now. I'm not so sure it's a great move, to be honest. I think from Lampard's point of view, he's early on in his managerial career. And at this stage, I think he's learning on the job at the moment. He was learning at Derby, making mistakes. He probably did about par, I thought, getting him to six in the Championship, then lost out in the playoffs. I don't think he's ready for a job of this magnitude at the moment. He may be a good manager in the future, but this could set him back if he fails here. To go in now, when Hazard's just gone, you can't make any signings for 2 transfer windows. I know they've got Pulisic in January, but he's a young player, probably going to need time to develop. And you've also got 2 players, long-term injuries as well, Hudson-Odoi and Loftus-Cheek, unlikely to start the season. So to me, there's a lot of problems there, and the expectations are still going to be high. So I think it's a bad timing for him to go in there.
I completely agree. I don't really think he's got the credentials to manage a top 6 side at the moment. I mean, as you say, Derby finished 6th in 2017-18.
Yeah.
He took that squad, sprinkled it with sort of loan signings like of Mount and Tomori, who he obviously might not have got if he didn't have those links with Chelsea, and then went along to finish in the same position with actually 1 less point. So it wasn't necessarily a remarkable season at Derby by any means. Looking at the prices, we've got Chelsea at about 5-4 to make the top 4 next season. What do you make of that?
I think there's a chance they'll make the top 4, but I wouldn't be backing them at that price. It looks a two between. There's probably 2 places available. If you think that Liverpool, and Manchester City finished so far ahead of the rest last season, you'd have to fancy them to be top 4 again. So you're looking at over the rest of the big 6, 4 teams chasing 2 spots. I think Spurs are probably the strongest of those sides. Got Ndombele coming in as well. Man United, I think, got more question marks. They're in a similar situation, gone with the emotive choice, if you like, with Solskjaer, and I don't think that's going to work. But I think for Chelsea, the bigger problem we're getting above Arsenal, who've got a better manager. He's been in there a year now, and I think Lampard's inexperience is going to let him down in a tough job. I mean, replacing Hazard is going to take some real good management, and He can't bring the players in himself. He's got a load of loan players coming back in. You mentioned Mount and Tomori; they'll be back in the mix. Will their Derby connections help? Bakayoko coming back in, Batshuayi among several players coming back in. It's just piecing that together and finding a way forward. I think top 4 will be tough.
Well, he's 7-2 at the moment to leave before the end of the season.
Yeah.
I personally think that looks like quite a good price. I mean, like you said, you've touched on sort of all the negative aspects there, really. I mean, Chelsea have got a reputation of being quite a fickle club. Maybe he will get a little bit more time than the average Blues boss. Obviously, this seems like a move kind of born out of sentiment more than anything else. What do you think of that price? Do you think it's worth it?
I think it's a little bit overpriced. I think I'd fancy him right now to maybe see out the season. I think what more likely the decision will be made at the end of the season. If they finish 5th or 6th, what does Abramovich do then? They're outside of the Champions League. Suddenly, then the transfer embargo then will be finished. So the job then becomes a lot more attractive to some bigger names. Does he then stick with Lampard if they've just finished outside the top 4? I'm not so sure. I think the job will be attractive then for him to look further afield and bring in a more experienced man to get the club back on track.
You talk about experienced man. I mean, I think looking at the timing, you could have said that someone like maybe Max Allegri, for example, having left Juventus, could have come into that job for, say, a couple of seasons. And like we know, the Chelsea job comes up quite frequently, really. So say Allegri had been there a couple of seasons, then maybe that opportunity could have arisen for Lampard. But do you think it speaks volumes about this position the club are in, that they've kind of been pushed into having to make that move?
Absolutely. I mean, for somebody like Allegri, I mean, what's the incentive to go in now when you've lost Hazard? You can't make any signings for 2 windows. I mean, I'm sure that's fed into thinking at the moment he's almost like a stopgap. I think Lampard. I think if it works out, look, if he confounds expectations and finishes in the top 4, then of course I think then the clamour, even if the club were thinking of him as a stopgap, if he makes the top 4, I'm sure then he'll get the chance to do the job for a bit longer. And don't get me wrong, I actually think he's got the potential to be a really good manager. I just think at this stage of the career it's come a bit too soon. I think if you'd stayed at Derby 2, maybe 3 seasons, get them into the Premier League, you've got that experience under your belt, then he may have been ready for a job of this size.
I completely agree, but I've heard obviously a lot of people saying as well, do you think there's an argument for the fact that it might be good timing in the sense that there's such little expectation on Chelsea going into the new season with the transfer ban, the loss of Eden Hazard, an inexperienced manager coming in, coupled with the fact he's got such a immaculate reputation as a player at Stamford Bridge? Do you think in that sense that perhaps then maybe this is a good opportunity for him and that he might not get such a baptism of fire as he would if he had come in at another stage?
Yeah, I mean, the fans will give him a bit more slack, but I mean, you have a similar situation with Manchester United. When Solskjaer goes in, the fans are all think it's fantastic, but then even with somebody as popular as Ollie, as soon as the defeats start mounting up and the club's expectations, which for a club like Man United and Chelsea, they're still going to be thinking we should be top 4 every season, however unrealistic that is, then pretty soon, no matter how popular the guy's been, even the supporters are going to start getting on your back. So I don't know. I think at a club like Chelsea, they think they want to be playing Champions League football. If they're not in there, I don't think he's going to last very long.
So they are our thoughts, but what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments what you make of Frank Lampard's move to Chelsea as their new manager.